Nord Stream gas pipes lie as a mass of destroyed metal on the Baltic seafloor. They used to provide cheap natural gas from Russia to Germany, but were subject to sabotage. The question remains, who exactly is responsible for their destruction? Could it be the Ukraine, seeking revenge against Russia, or the United States, attempting to disrupt European alliance on Russian energy? Alternatively, could Russia itself be involved? There is a country that we have not yet mentioned, but it played a crucial role in the covert operation to destroy the gas supply from Russia to mainland Europe via Germany. You're about to find out later in this video. Before we proceed, we must issue a serious warning. If you click on the subscribe button, a random gas pipe in Europe may explode immediately, so use caution. Nord Stream is a natural gas pipeline that runs from Russia to Germany, crossing the Baltic Sea. The pipeline consists of two parallel lines, Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2. Nord Stream 1 became operational in 2011, and it has a capacity of 55 billion cubic meters of natural gas per year. Nord Stream 2 was initially planned to be completed in 2019, but was delayed due to opposition from the United States and some European countries, who argued that the pipeline would increase Europe's dependence on Russian gas and undermine the continent's energy security. Despite these objections, construction of Nord Stream 2 resumed in late 2020, and the pipeline was completed in September 2021. The pipeline has a capacity of 55 billion cubic meters of natural gas per year, the same as the original Nord Stream pipeline. However, in September 2021, the pipeline was the target of an act of sabotage, causing the project to be temporarily halted. It was initially unclear who was responsible for the sabotage, but the United States and some European countries, including Poland and Ukraine, publicly accused Russia of being behind the attack. Russia denied any involvement, and the situation further heightened tensions between Russia and the West. The Nord Stream pipelines are controversial because they increase Europe's dependence on Russian natural gas and bypass countries like Ukraine, which currently serves as a transit country for Russian gas to reach Europe. Some critics argue that this gives Russia too much leverage over Europe's energy security, while others argue that the pipelines help ensure a stable and reliable supply of natural gas to Europe. For Germany, the pipelines are particularly valuable, as they provide an inexpensive source of energy for households and businesses and have contributed to the country's economic growth. Natural gas is a vital component of Germany's energy mix, providing around 24% of the country's energy needs in 2020, and this dependence is only set to increase with the country's planned phase-out of nuclear power and coal. In addition, the Nord Stream pipelines have broader implications for Europe's energy security. Europe has historically been dependent on Russian gas, with Russia accounting for around 40% of the region's gas imports. The Nord Stream pipelines increase this dependence, raising concerns about Russia's ability to use energy exports as a tool for political leverage. Since its inception, Nord Stream 1 has been viewed as a potential threat to Western power by the United States and its NATO allies. The company responsible for the pipeline, Nord Stream AG, was established in Switzerland in 2005 as a joint venture between Gazprom, a Russian company that generates substantial profits for its shareholders, who are believed to have close ties to President Putin, and several European energy firms. While Gazprom controlled the majority of the company's shares, the European firms had the right to manage sales of the natural gas to local distributors in Germany and Western Europe. Gazprom's profits were shared with the Russian government, and at times, gas and oil revenues amounted to a significant portion of the country's annual budget, reaching as high as 45% in certain years. According to NATO and Washington, Nord Stream 1 was already a risky endeavor. However, the construction of Nord Stream 2, which was finalized in September 2021, doubled the supply of affordable natural gas available to Germany and Western Europe should it be approved by German regulators. The second pipeline would provide enough gas to satisfy over half of Germany's annual consumption, further increasing Europe's dependence on Russian energy. Tensions between Russia and NATO have been consistently rising, fueled by the Biden administration's assertive foreign policy. The position of Olaf Scholz, Germany's recently elected chancellor, was uncertain to Washington. In a speech given in Prague following the fall of Afghanistan, Scholz expressed support for French President Emmanuel Macron's call for a more independent foreign policy for Europe, implying a reduced reliance on the actions of the United States. Amid these developments, Russian forces had been gradually amassing on the Ukrainian borders, raising concern in Washington. By the end of December, more than 100,000 troops were positioned to strike from Belarus and Crimea, and Secretary of State Blinken warned that this number could easily be doubled. The situation surrounding Nord Stream once again became the focus of the administration's attention. The United States feared that as long as Europe relied on the pipelines for inexpensive natural gas, countries such as Germany would be hesitant to provide Ukraine with the resources it needed to confront Russia. At this time of uncertainty, President Biden authorized his National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, to create a group made up of representatives from different agencies to develop a plan of action. The group was instructed to consider all possible options, but ultimately only one solution was chosen. The next step was the development of a covert operation by the U.S. Navy to destroy the Nord Stream pipelines. This information was made public by the investigative journalist Seymour Hersh on February 8, 2023, in his article titled How America Took Out the Nord Stream Pipeline. Hersh is well known for his work as a journalist and has received numerous awards for his investigative reporting. In the upcoming meetings, the individuals involved discussed different strategies for an attack. The Navy recommended utilizing a recently acquired submarine to directly target the pipeline. The Air Force suggested dropping bombs that could be detonated remotely after a certain delay. The CIA stressed the importance of keeping the operation secretive regardless of the approach taken. It was evident to all that the situation was serious and not to be taken lightly. If the attack was linked back to the United States, it would be considered an act of war. Furthermore, the waters of the Baltic Sea were heavily patrolled by the Russian Navy, and there were no oil rigs that could be used as cover for a diving operation. Would the divers have to go to Estonia, right across the border from Russia's natural gas loading docks, to train for the mission? It would be a political nightmare if it would come out. Then, on February 7, 2022, less than 3 weeks before the seemingly inevitable Russian invasion of Ukraine, Biden met in his White House office with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, who, after some wobbling, was now firmly on the American team. At the press briefing that followed, Biden defiantly said, "If Russia invades, there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it." 20 days earlier, Undersecretary Nuland had delivered essentially the same message at a State Department briefing with little press coverage. "I want to be very clear to you today," she said in response to the question. "If Russia invades Ukraine, one way or another, Nord Stream 2 will not move forward." Biden's and Nuland's indiscretion might have frustrated some of the planners, but it also created an opportunity. According to Seymour Hersh's source, some of the senior officials of the CIA determined that blowing up the pipeline no longer could be considered a covert option because the president just announced that they knew how to do it. Norway was the perfect place to base this top-secret mission. In recent years, the United States has significantly increased its military presence in Norway, a country whose western border runs along the North Atlantic Ocean and merges with Russia above the Arctic Circle. This has caused some controversy among locals, but has also created high-paying jobs and contracts. The U.S. has invested hundreds of millions of dollars to upgrade and expand American Navy and Air Force facilities in Norway, including an advanced synthetic aperture radar in the far north that can penetrate deep into Russia. Additionally, a newly refurbished American submarine base has become operational, and more American submarines are now able to work closely with their Norwegian colleagues to monitor and spy on a major Russian nuclear stronghold on the Kola Peninsula, located 250 miles to the east. The U.S. has also expanded a Norwegian air base in the north and provided the Norwegian Air Force with a fleet of Boeing-built P-8 Poseidon patrol planes to strengthen its long-range spying on Russia. The Norwegian Jens Stoltenberg, the current Secretary General of NATO, has been a staunch anti-communist and hardliner on all things Putin and Russia. He served as Norway's prime minister for 8 years before being appointed to his high NATO post with American backing in 2014, and has cooperated with the American intelligence community since the Vietnam War. Planners in Washington recognized the need to involve Norway in the covert operation to destroy the Nord Stream pipelines. The Norwegian Navy, with its highly skilled sailors and divers, had generations of experience in the deep-sea oil and gas exploration and could be trusted to keep the mission secret. Additionally, the destruction of Nord Stream would enable Norway to sell more of its own natural gas to Europe. The Norwegian Navy quickly located the ideal location to destroy the Nord Stream pipelines. The pipelines were situated in shallow waters off Denmark's Bornholm Island and ran over a mile apart along a seafloor that was only 260 feet deep. The divers, operating from a Norwegian Alta-class mine hunter, would use a mix of oxygen, nitrogen, and helium streaming from their tanks to plant shaped C4 charges on the 4 pipelines with concrete protective covers. The divers would need to work carefully and take their time to complete the task, which was both tedious and dangerous. However, the waters off Bornholm had no significant tidal currents, which would have otherwise made the diving task more difficult. The Norwegians had a plan for when to carry out the operation. Every June, for 21 years, the American 6th Fleet sponsored a NATO exercise in the Baltic Sea involving many Allied ships in the region. The Norwegians proposed that this exercise would be the ideal cover to plant the mines. The Americans proposed to add a research and development exercise to the program, which would involve teams of divers from NATO planting mines while competing teams used the latest underwater technology to find and destroy them. The exercise would be held off the coast of Bornholm Island, where the C4 explosives would be in place by the end of Baltops 22, with a 48-hour timer attached. All the Americans and Norwegians involved would be long gone before the first explosion. As the mission approached its final stage, Washington started to have second thoughts. They were worried that a 2-day window for the bomb's detonation would be too close to the end of Baltops, and it would be too obvious that the U.S. was involved. Therefore, the White House asked if the divers could find a way to blow up the pipelines later on command. It was a much more demanding assignment than those in Washington understood. There was no way for the team in Norway to know when the president might push the button. Would it be in a few weeks, in many months, or in half a year or longer? The explosives attached to the pipelines in the Baltic Sea could be triggered by a sonar buoy dropped by a plane, but background noises in the heavily trafficked waters could accidentally trigger them. To prevent this, the sonar buoy emitted a sequence of unique low-frequency tonal sounds that only the timing device would recognize. The longer the explosives were in the water, the greater the chance of a random signal launching them. On September 26, 2022, a Norwegian Navy P-8 plane dropped a sonar buoy, which triggered the explosives a few hours later, shutting down 3 of the 4 pipelines. Methane gas was seen spreading on the water surface, and the world learned that something irreversible had taken place. After the pipeline bombing, the media speculated that Russia was behind the attack, but never established a clear motive for such an act of self-sabotage. When it was revealed that Russian authorities were getting estimates for the cost of repairing the pipelines, the New York Times described it as complicating theories about the attack. The American media did not investigate the earlier threats made by Biden and Nuland. While it was never clear why Russia would destroy its own pipeline, Secretary of State Blinken suggested that the crisis was a potentially good moment. This is what he said, and I quote, "It's a tremendous opportunity to once and for all remove the dependence on Russian energy and thus to take away from Vladimir Putin the weaponization of energy as a means of advancing his imperial designs. That's very significant, and that offers tremendous strategic opportunity for the years to come. But meanwhile, we're determined to do everything we possibly can to make sure the consequences of all this are not borne by citizens in our countries or, for that matter, around the world." Victoria Nuland, the Undersecretary of State, expressed her approval of the destruction of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline during a Senate hearing in January. She stated her satisfaction at the pipeline's fate and said that the Biden administration shared her views.